Happy International Month. We are celebrating International Month. Let's stop. And there's Diamond Initiative. She's joined in. Oops. She's invited. So we're gonna have the answer. Greetings, Diamond Initiative.
Evening. How are
Jamelia
you?
Gay.
Jamelia Gay, yes.
Yes, I got the right word. Let me just get myself comfortable. I don't think my feng shui is right. There we
You know
go.
what? I feel the same way. I've been trying to find the right room where there'll be as little noise as possible.
Yes.
So I
Okay.
have to adjust.
I feel a little bit better. Look at how we caught some colors, some
I know.
greens. Look at that. And those of you that are joining in on the Roots Reggae Hub Instagram on the platform, we are here today with Jamelia Gay. I'm going to just share a little bit about Jamelia Gay. I'm just going to read her bio here. Jamelia Gay is the founder and managing director of Diamond Initiative, provider of ADHD and executive functioning coaching, as well as a tutoring and educational consultancy services in Trinidad and Tobago and the Greater Toronto area. Through her coaching program, Jamelia teaches you to transform life with on purpose thinking, and coaches you to master your focus, working memory, impulsivity, emotional regulation, task completion, and self-confidence. Jamelia serves her clients by providing high quality, edifying, individualized, and inclusive services to diminish self-doubt and boost self-forgiveness, self-awareness, and self-development. Jamelia is the co-founder of Global Empowerment Initiative, a nonprofit organization which is geared towards universal empowerment of children, women, and men with vulnerable and marginalized communities. Her passion for elevating the Black community was expanded through her virtual Diamond Initiative presents I Am Unapologetically Black, and Diamond Initiative presents I Am Still Black. Love that. Throughout the series, Jamelia hosted weekly conversations on the presentation, identifying and empowerment in communities throughout Canada and the Caribbean. In addition to hosting, Jamelia has also been the guest on various media platforms, such as including CCCN, TV6, TTT News, Triple T News, I always have to say. It's a lot of platforms, CNC3, News Trinidad and Tobago, and Follow Your First Mind podcast. Jamelia has also been the panelist for events such as YMCA Trinidad and Tobago, International Children's Day, International Women's Day forums at the Seat of the Table of Virtual Summit and Seneca College grad alumni panel. Her mission is to provide inclusive and equitable opportunities for mentorship, advocacy, empowerment, and edification for adults, children, families, and educators. Welcome, Jamelia Gay.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, I saw when you followed me and I said, what? ADHD executive? What is this? What is this? And I look at a time where we've gone through just so many changes in the last 2 years, and I'm telling you, give anybody ADHD.
Listen,
so much
listen. There's been I'm really glad you brought that up because there have been so many changes with the pandemic.
Yes.
However, there's been so many things that have been the same, but they're now highlighted because of the pandemic. When you're cooped up in your house, when you're trying to adjust to everything that's happening, and everything is abrupt, unforeseen, and not everyone is able to adapt it as easily as they thought they would have been able to in a crisis or in a change. So it's really highlighting, and that's one positive of the pandemic. There are not many, But
To
one
recover,
positive of
like
the
yourself.
pandemic is it's forcing people, yeah, it's forcing people to look within, to become more self-aware, and they can no longer ignore, we can no longer ignore the things that have been holding us back in life. And that's one benefit that's come out of this pandemic. It's forcing us to come out of our comfort zones
Hmm.
and to take that path to healing, whether it's physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. We have no choice now.
And this is it. And this show, listeners, as you're tuning in, and those that are joining on Instagram, big up yourself, Steve Adi, Austin, 22nd Avenue, Art Avenue, big up yourself. We This show is dedicated to people of African descent transitioning from their corporate institutions into a world of operating their own ventures and coping and adapting and learning how to focus and manage and
Mhm.
operate efficiently. Because I'm telling you, I've been tested. You know, I
Yep,
have been tested.
yep.
And if you could just tell us, Jamelia, about Diamond Initiative. Why did you start this initiative?
Mhm.
Where did it begin? And what services does it offer?
Sure. So funny enough, Diamond Initiative started when the pandemic began. And,
Okay.
as I was saying, I got
Oh,
forced
good.
to make the step that I've always been wanting to make, but I've always found every excuse not to. And, the main excuse would be it's a big financial risk to start your own business.
Mhm.
Um, it pushes you out of your comfort zone in ways that you can't even imagine. And I've gotten used to being in my comfort zone. I mean, it's called a comfort zone for a reason.
Yes.
And just before the pandemic started, I believe it was in November. I was working as a supervisor of a daycare. Amazing place. It's my favorite daycare that I've worked at in
Nice.
Toronto. Had a wonderful relationship with the employer, still do, but I knew that the 9 to 5 was not for me. It didn't align with my purpose. And even though I had good working relationships with the director, anyone in management, even if I was in a managerial position, it still wasn't my baby, which means I still had to conform to the requirements and mandates of the person above me. And when you have a mission to serve or, a purpose to fulfill, you can't do that if you're boxed into what someone else above you wants you to do or how they want you to fulfill their mission for their business. So, I decided to take a leap of faith.
Mhm.
I did some preparation, and in 2020, I decided that it's time for me to go out on my own and start my company. The reason I decided to name it Diamond Initiative was the word diamond, really resonates with me. It has a lot of significance for me.
Mhm.
One, my mom calls me Diamond. It's been a nickname she's had for me from since I was a teenager, if I'm not mistaken.
Gotta get
Because she said, you've been through a lot, but you don't stay down. You're a
Mhm.
diamond in the rough, you're a diamond in the making,
Yeah.
and all of the struggles, everything that you've been through has molded you into the woman that you are. So she's always called me Diamond. I also grew up on Diamond Crescents in Trinidad, so the diamond was inescapable.
Yeah.
And then within that diamond, after the D, you have the IAM. And for me, that just stood out. I am,
I
because I'm very big on the I am.
proper.
And
Love that.
wherever I speak, whoever I speak to, whether it's on a platform or it's me talking to someone that I meet face to face, I try to make sure that that individual recognizes the importance and the significance of owning your I am, because
Mhm.
everyone else is very eager to do it for you.
Oh
They will
yeah.
not hesitate to define you for you.
Yes.
And if you stay quiet about it, then before you know it, you have a whole name out there that is not aligned with who you've decided you are because you haven't actually made that decision. And even if you have, you weren't bold enough or straightforward enough or confident enough to declare it to everyone else.
But just to
So
go there.
I really wanted to have that I am in there. Just to remind people whenever they see that logo, whenever they see or hear of Diamond Initiative, to say that mantra when you wake up in the morning before you go to bed at night. Who are you? I am beautiful. I am strong. I am vulnerable. I am feeling like a hot mess today, but I am going to recover. I am going to keep striving. I am phenomenal. I am multifaceted. And this isn't just for you and myself, but it's for every individual, whether you are quote unquote neurotypical or part of the neurodiverse community. Own who you are, because with your flaws and your perceived imperfections, you are still immaculate, you are still beautiful, you are still phenomenal. So it's about self-awareness and accepting yourself. As for the services that I offer, I am a tutor in math and English, particularly for the early years. I also am an ADHD and executive function coach, which we'll be
We're gonna
talking
talk about
a
that.
bit more about tonight. And then I also provide consulting services, educational consulting services in Toronto, as well as Trinidad and Tobago, because that is my home and I will always want to be connected to my country.
Yes, yes, big up yourself because I even played you some Queen Omega when you came in there. I don't know if you know because we're all about reggae, but Queen Omega is one of the
Yes.
feminines in the roughs that are doing reggae music in
Mm-hmm.
Trinidad, right? So female at that, so big up, yes.
Yes.
So big up
Oh,
Trinidad.
I saw Trinidad, Trinity to the bone. I
Yeah,
saw someone started typing there, I am in the chat. I love it. I
lovely.
love
Yeah,
it so much.
lovely.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. This is amazing. So now let's talk about ADHD and executive function.
Yes.
Now, from Kwanzaa throughout Black History Month, we've started to say, you just actually spoke about Kujichagulia defining who you are, or Kujichagulia. Everyone says it different. I say Kujichagulia, right? Defining who you are, beginning to define who you are to
Mm-hmm.
align so you could align yourself, right? And then we have now the
Yeah.
International Decade of the African, and there's been much talk about cooperative economics. Again, a lot of people were aiming that 2020 is that year. We're going to launch our
Yep.
businesses out, entrepreneurship, boom, right? Now, many of us, however, have now, like when I see people that have even come on the show where it's like, I offer this service, sign up. And it's like there's hesitancy to sign up because your business not ready yet, right?
Yes.
We learned this in the previous shows with Core Platinum, and
Mm-hmm.
there we have all these entrepreneurs that have come into place, but we're adults with adult development gaps, which you're going to be talking
Mm-hmm.
to us, right? And we also are struggling, as I said earlier, with making that transition from
Yep.
going from the corporate institutions, any kind of institution, could be the hospitals, anything, to going into your own business practices, your own
Mm-hmm.
ventures. There's so much to process in this digital age. You open up your computer and there's your whole temple. There's a whole world. There's this whole temple of things going
Yes.
on and everybody else's temples and networks. And I know we must all have ADHD, as I said at this point. What exactly is ADHD and what is executive function?
Yes. Okay. So typically when you see ADHD or you see an individual with ADHD, what you're looking for, some of the markers that can help you identify it would be hyperactivity. You're looking at individuals who have very impulsive behaviors. You're looking at individuals who have trouble focusing. They have trouble paying attention. They have trouble maintaining their working memories. So, for example, we're having a conversation right now. However, if you ask me a question, but then you continue talking about something in the interim, by the time you get to me, there's a chance that I've already forgotten either the
Me
question or
talking.
the answer that I was going to provide. And it's very normal, right?
Comment.
And when you think about executive function, the difference with that is executive function lies within individuals who have ADHD. However, you don't have to have an ADHD diagnosis to have executive function development needs. And that's one reason I really wanted to target that community, because individuals think if I don't have an ADHD diagnosis, then I don't need help.
Mm.
And then they continue going on, caring about their lives without healing and without developing and without finding the strategies to help them succeed. So when you look at executive function, which is a larger umbrella and that lies in the prefrontal cortex, you are looking at having trouble being motivated. Or if you are motivated, you're having trouble maintaining that motivation or transferring it from one thing to the next. So for example, I love music. If you're giving me something with music, chances are I'm going to be motivated and I can listen to that whole day. If you give me something that has to do with chemistry, I'm done
Can I just put my
because it
hand
doesn't
up for
appeal
one
to.
second? because I am having an
Yes.
ADHD moment because I forgot to tell our listeners, get your pens and pad, get your notebooks. I put it in the story, but I actually have to go get my notebook, so I'm gonna have to step away 2 seconds.
Please, yes.
Take a pen, please. The notebook, please. All right, so because I'm like learning so much already. So it's like, yes, I need my notebook. Let me get back to my little feng shui here. You definitely need your notebooks to get your notebooks because there's a lot to learn and just to really start to observe about yourself and things that we can. This is awesome. Continue,
Yes.
Amelia.
All right. I see some more people with their notebooks and their
Yes, joining
pencils in
in.
the comments.
So those of you that have joined in, we're here with Jamelia Gay, and she is talking to us about ADHD and executive functions, and we have just taken a
Mhm.
quick stick up in to get our notebooks because she has a wealth of information. She's a queen amongst us. Trust me. I am excited to have you here. Jamelia, if you could just continue to carry on, like to break down what executive function is and the difference
Yes,
between
of
ADHD.
course. Not a problem. So we were talking a bit about the working memory. We were talking about impulsivity, and we were talking about inattention, for example. One huge misconception that has been going through the community, even from when I was a child, is that when you think of ADHD, you just think of the H in ADHD, which is the hyperactivity. So what you're expecting to see is a child, for example, in a preschool classroom who can't sit still and is running left, right, up, down, and is just having trouble focusing. And that's where a lot of people stop when they hear ADHD. They think that's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
That is incorrect. Is it a factor? Absolutely it is. Is it a marker? Absolutely it is. However, there are so many individuals, especially, actually not even especially children and adults alike. There are so many individuals who have been either misdiagnosed or undiagnosed because individuals have been looking for incorrect markers or have only been hyper-focused on one. So you may have children, especially girls, because in some communities, the girls are more misdiagnosed than the men. So you see individuals who may be very focused in school, for example, who may be getting great grades in schools. Those are your A's, your A plus students, especially if you're coming from a Caribbean community. You know it's books and academics, especially when you're trying to get from primary school to high school and you have your common entrance or your SEA to take. But if you're only looking for hyperactivity, then chances are children are going to fall between the cracks. And then children who fall between the cracks grow up to be adults who continue to be living without a diagnosis and without seeking the strategies. Children with developmental needs become adults with developmental needs. And adults who go unsupported
Mm-hmm.
either they could go either way. They either continue to be unsupported and they don't live up to their greatness, or they overcompensate and then they become individuals who try to judge everyone else around them to take the spotlight off of them. And these are things that we want to
That we
avoid.
see. Okay.
So being able to pinpoint these things, to highlight these factors and these markers at a younger age helps to make things better for when children are growing up. One, so that they can get the sufficient resources and the help that they need, but also so we can help build their confidence. Because as individuals, even from a young age, our intuition is high. We know that there's an area with which we have needs. However, not every adult around us is willing or has even been trained to
Mhm.
pay attention and to see when there's a need.
Yes,
Because again, it can look different with different individuals. Just as we have different learning styles, ADHD and executive function needs present in different ways for different people.
this is it. And I mean, I know that I think I'm in that hypersensitivity. I was watching your videos and I was just like, I'm definitely ADHD. I passed it down to one or two child, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And even, I think even in the archetypes, I think I passed it down to another one, a grandchild.
Right.
Because they definitely, are dealing with ADHD. But again, now we
Mm-hmm.
look at adults. I remember teaching in the Boys and Girls Club, and we had to go into training, and then in the training, working with children with ADHD, all the adults were like, I think we all have ADHD.
Yeah.
We're, struggling with this. Now, when we're going into that, like, that transition from, a lot of us went from entrepreneurship, a lot of us left our jobs in the last
Mm-hmm.
2 years. There's a lot, I think for me, I'm high functioning working for other people.
Right.
Bringing it into a home office, or those that have been working, let's say from the home, in home offices now, whether it's for their own business, it's very hard to transfer those skills,
Yes.
those organizational skills. It could be for a number of reasons. If
Mm-hmm.
you could just speak to us about that and how it relates to executive functions, environment, etc.
Right. So, excuse me, when you think about executive function, excuse me, again, you're thinking about the prefrontal cortex. So this is where your motivation lives. This is where your focus lives. This is where your ability, your ability to function efficiently is residing. When you have, I don't want to say deficiencies. When there is an insufficiency with regards to the amount of dopamine that's present as a neurotransmitter within the brain, the amount of norepinephrine that's present as well. When there is an insufficiency with these neurotransmitters, that's when you see the executive function needs requiring that development. And it's not that you can never function with it, but if you can identify it, you identify the area you need the need, you are able to then identify the resources and the strategies you need to succeed. So when you're looking at transitions, for example, helping yourself be able to cope, be able to be more organized or maintain that organization, then you start looking at some strategies. So, for example, a lot of people get overwhelmed at a transition, especially if it's something that's abrupt, something that they didn't see coming. You know, there's that whole phrase, adapt or die, but not everyone is equipped to adapt as easily as others would. So, you know, one thing I suggest is take a beat and literally take a beat, BEAT. So the first thing you want to do is breathe. You have to pause, take a breath, literally take 3 deep breaths. And that's the physical pause, but it's also the theoretical pause. Because in a moment when you're overwhelmed, there's so much information around you that you just don't know what to do with yourself. And it can look, you know, with two ways. You either react physically, and there's that outward reaction, or you retreat within yourself and you become withdrawn, you become detached, and then you seem a bit, you're displaying apathy. So take a beat, breathe, take a pause, and assess your situation. The next thing I would say is emotion. So identify the emotion that you're feeling in that moment. Because the first thing that we just say is, I feel overwhelmed. Or some people may just go
Mhm.
straight to, I'm upset or I'm angry. But there's always an
Mhm.
underlying emotion.
Mhm.
So let me think of an example. Okay, so I'll give you an example that I actually put on one of my posts recently. And this isn't a work example, but just to help people see those steps. I would like to start working out because my fitness level is not where it needs to be at all. But I always put it off because I procrastinate. My ADHD brain just tells me that, you know, this isn't something that I can do right now for whatever the reason be, whether I am not motivated anymore, or, you know, some people may look at me and just say, well, you're lazy. Why don't you just do it? Like it's Nike or something. So what I've done is first take a breath, take my pause, take my 3 breaths, and then assess the emotion. What is the emotion I'm feeling in this moment? And for me, that emotion is actually fear that I'm going to start my workout regimen, but it's not going to, I'm not going to get the results that I want. And as a result of that, because of that fear of failure, which you see a lot in individuals with ADHD, I now avoid doing that task.
Yeah.
Another emotion that I've experienced is comparing. So comparing my progress to someone else, which is something I advise everyone not to do.
Yeah.
Don't compare yourself to others. You're on your own path, you're on your own journey, and you're in your own chapter. So I'll
Mhm.
go back to the fear of failure. Then I would do step A, which is become aware of the situation that you're dealing with, become aware of the emotion that you're feeling, become aware of the driving force behind that emotion. So I've assessed, and now I know that my fear of failure is because I don't want to put the effort in and still not get the results that I want, because then I can be prone to self-defeat, which is another marker for individuals with ADHD. And I beat myself up. I tell myself I'm not enough. I feel that nothing I do is working out, and I talk down to myself with that self-doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Once I've accepted that about me, instead of trying to bury it or pretend it's not there, I accept that about myself. Now I know this is here. Thank you. This feeling has gotten me where I am so far, but now I can thank it and say, I don't need to feel like that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
How can I come out of that? Which takes me to T, which is take the step. What strategies do I need to help myself succeed? So whether that is breaking it down from a 30-minute workout to a 15-minute workout, so I feel less overwhelmed about having a 30-minute duration where I may not be able to have enough stamina to get through that. Maybe I need to, instead of trying to do squats and jumping jacks and do what everyone else is telling me I need to do to work out, maybe I fit in my love of music. So the task that I have an aversion to or for, now I'm going to couple it with something that I actually love, and that's going to motivate me to get that done. So now instead of doing a typical workout, now I'm doing a dance regimen, and I'm just dancing around my room, whining, hands up in the air,
Yeah.
and doing what I
Yeah.
need to do. So these are all things that you would do. Just take a beat. Because when it comes to transitions, for example, especially a work transition like you were talking about before, it can be very overwhelming. And if you don't put those steps in place ahead of time, then when you're stuck in that moment, it's going to be very hard for you to try to come down and figure out what can I do to help myself get through it. So it's about being proactive, being ahead of time, thinking about what you need or what helps motivate you. So write down, make a playlist of your favorite songs. Have your journal out where you can find it. If writing poetry, for example, or if spoken word helps you. If you are a very spiritual individual, then have your prayers at the side of the table that you go through that help you center yourself. Have your meditations ready, but have those things in place so that when you are in that overwhelming moment, you already have something to go to. You have those resources available to you, and then you can move forward with that.
So that's sort of like those things in place are your support as well. Because sometimes I think when,
Exactly.
okay, because I know that you have a deeper angle, I might even jump there, a deeper angle on what's support look like. Because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times if you've gone for like any kind of psychotherapy or any of the sort, they will say, create that support system or whatever the case may be. So you would think, it's this person in place and whatnot. But then you think of children with disabilities, you think of the environment, like how are you going to lay
Yeah.
it out and all this
Mm-hmm.
and what have you, and the charts, the meal plans and what have
Yeah.
you. So what does support look like? Like just if you could give us some examples of how
Mm-hmm.
you might tailor support.
So support is subjective. So even the things that I may mention tonight may not work for every individual who's listening, or every individual out there, because it's very subjective and it's based on what will work best for you. And especially when you're looking at children, I think that's one thing a lot of educators, and I say this as an educator myself, a lot of educators take that for granted in that they think um, one regimen or one support strategy is going to work for every individual out there, and that's not true. So I think from in my opinion, support first looks like finding out what that individual needs, because you can't support someone if you don't know what they need support with. So
Mhm.
that's where it starts. What does that child need? What does that adult need? And what type of support would benefit him or her the best? Um, for an individual with ADHD, whether it's a child or not, I think support would look like first finding out and getting the information so that you have knowledge on what ADHD looks like, so that you can identify it in that individual, help them identify it for themselves, and then find those strategies. Um, I would say let's talk about the classroom, for example. You want to have, what's the word? You want to have activities that appeal to the child, nearby so that you can then, sorry, lost my train of thought, but so that they would be able to engage. Not everyone, as I mentioned, with ADHD would be hyper-focused or hyperactive. So it's about finding the type of learning style that would appeal to them so that they can then be able to engage in that activity. For adults with ADHD, it's about helping with the organization skills. So setting up your calendar. For example, if you know that you procrastinate a lot, if you are missing appointments, for example, if you go to an appointment, schedule the follow-up right away. Don't wait until you get home because chances are you're going to lose that motivation and you're not going to get it done. You want, pardon?
That focus, kind of like you're going to lose that.
Yes, yes.
You were in that
That
moment, just
exactly,
take it,
exactly,
right? And count
exactly.
it.
And it's not yes, and it's not just the focus only, but it's the motivation to get it done. Because
Mm-hmm.
with individuals with ADHD, even though we get motivated, it's very hard to maintain that motivation over a period of time. So it's getting things done right away. If you are studying in school, for example, and you have an assignment, start working on that assignment right away. Make a plan and highlight the main topics or the main tasks that you need to do and put a date next to it so you have an actual schedule for when you want to get to these things so that you can check it off. Because a lot of people with with ADHD are very concrete thinkers, so they need things to be mapped out directly in front of them. They need instructions to be given to them directly and step by step. So instead of telling me three things to do at once,
Mm-hmm.
tell me the first thing. When I get that done, tell me the second thing, and then give me the third step. Because if you give me all three at the same time, I'm overwhelmed right away. And then that's where you struggle again. So if you want to support, then you need to have discrete steps instead of having a very big, overwhelming abundance of tasks and information being thrown at you.
Okay, corporations that are not, like I find that are not flat level, right? And they're, the tiers are there. I find that the tasks are set out, like if we go back to
Excuse me.
bringing those, bringing your business to your home business or what have you, right? I find that the tasks are usually kind of segregated out, you know what I mean, per department, etc.,
Yeah,
right? So there's a little bit less. Then you run into running your own company
business.
and realize, well, how many hats you have to wear or
Hmm.
to seek specialized help or services, etc. Um, there's that. And then there's also those that are still in, let's say, the office, going again,
Right.
pushing with that whole digital world. Like I've had people who've been in managerial positions. I've been in a as costume supervisor for a Netflix movie where
Mm.
it was very, very, I spent 15 hours a day um, functioning, but my
Wow.
health didn't like, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
It was endurance. It was not, it was like intense being in that role now where everything is coming at you. You look at your computer and you have all these tabs open, you know what I mean? And
Yep.
this is a
So,
mess. I want to call it like, because like I mean, people in these roles are like losing their heads, and
yep.
it's overwhelming. I know we're using these words overwhelming, but it's like it's serious.
So I'm actually just typing two words down because so one way that I present with ADHD is, or even with an executive function mind, is that, like I said before, like if you're saying something and right away I'm like, oh, I want to respond to that and I want to respond to that too. But then by the time I get to like the fourth thing I want to respond to, I already forget what the first thing was. It's
This is
like,
what's going
what was it?
on.
Exactly. And there are so many people that do that. But so in the past, what I would have done is I would try to retain everything on my own without help. And it just didn't work for me. But there was the fear of, if it looks like I'm typing something or it looks like I'm looking to the side, it's going to seem unprofessional. It's going to seem that you don't know what you're talking about. But no, this is what works for me. I need to have my points because my brain needs help to keep that information. Or if I see a point at the side, then I can get back to it. Um, But just to come back, what I wanted to write down was overwhelm, first of all, because you were talking about, having so many tabs open, for example, or having, when you transition to, the either the home office or the in-office office,
Office, office.
there's so much information. There's so much information there, and that's the overwhelm. But why do you have to have all those tabs open? Because we feel that we're supposed to be managing so much at a time, and we want to be able to multitask, and we want to get these things done, and we're striving for perfection, and we want to meet these deadlines. But these things can be done without burning yourself out. So find the strategies that work for you. If you know the tabs that you have to have open, bookmark them and then close them. So you're not going to risk losing them. And then prioritize what are the three main priorities that you have to do, and then what are the secondary ones.
What happens when
So
you're in
that
a
if you
hot
don't
mess
get to
though,
this,
where all those priorities, those three priorities seem like I know it's you have to figure it out. You have to, I guess you have to make a decision, but sometimes all three
right?
priorities seem equally as important. It is,
True.
and I think sometimes they all are. You know what I mean?
And that's
They're
very
one thing at a
fair,
time,
right?
but
That's very fair. But then, so in that case, then instead of, okay, go through different factors. So first you're looking at it as levels of importance. If you still have things that are on par, then you go to the next step. Look at it in a time sensitive manner. So if you have 6 tasks and 4 of them are, I feel like these are all as important as the other, then go to the next step to help filter through it. What is the most time sensitive one?
yes,
Because chances are you're not going to have to get to everything at the same time. You're telling yourself you want to complete everything by a certain time so you can get to something else.
and it's funny sometimes
But does
we manage our tasks based on even
mm-hmm,
money availability, and that's when I think it even gets like a mess. Where you're
right.
managing money availability, then it's priority, but then now it's all priority. you know, that's
Well, so then make yourself a chart, whether it's a pie chart or a table, so that you can have different factors, different determining factors. So you have your time sensitive column, you have your priority column, you have your budget column, and then cross-reference them and
mm,
organize it in that way.
you have
So
to.
you're not saying this is less important than the other, but what you are saying is my health, specifically my mental health, is more important than these tasks.
Yes.
So prioritize yourself. And once you do that, then you're going to be better able to prioritize each other thing because they're all important, especially as adults and especially when you have bills to pay. Like you have no choice but to get to it, but
Yeah.
you can't get to it when your body shuts down.
No.
And if you're not listening to your body, it's going to make you listen when it's too late and you have no choice but to stop. And now all 6 of your tasks are unattended because you're in bed because you can't move. So prioritize, make your columns and cross-reference them.
Okay. I like the cross-reference
You know,
aspect of it. You really have to
mhm.
put in the work to really even
you have
sometimes
you have to.
just situate your priorities. Oh, I don't know what to do. I'm overwhelmed. But you're just
Yes.
saying take that beat and
Take that
definitely
beat,
prioritize. Yes. What did the B stand for in beat? I forgot. What did the B stand for?
breathe,
Breathe. Oh yeah.
breathe. Just breathe.
Breathe.
Always start with that
So
breath.
breathe.
And breathing,
Mhm.
yes. So you're taking your 3 breaths, you're putting your hands up and you're asking yourself, what do I need to get to in this moment? What do I need in this moment? Or you're just practicing that pause. You're taking a theoretical breath and you're stopping and saying, I need 5 minutes, or I need 5 hours, or I need 5 days. Assess the situation and determine what you need for yourself in that moment. Because in this world, in this society, the corporate world, or even if you're working on your own, the demand wants you to go all the time. You have to be on 24/7, or that's what they want you to think. Your
Mhm.
mental health and your well being always comes first. Nurture yourself and find the strategies that would help you succeed.
Yeah.
And with regards to support, there's support at a micro level and a macro level. And sometimes, you can manage with self-determined support systems, but sometimes you need to get help elsewhere, whether you need to speak to a therapist, whether you need to get an ADHD and executive function coach like myself, whether you need to go to see a family physician, for example, and you need medication to help you be able to thrive. But support comes in different ways and on different levels. And they're all worth exploring depending on your developmental need.
Beautiful. I don't know if we've touched on much on this, but again, what are some like triggers or distractions that can take away from our focus that we could pay attention to? I touched a little bit on your environmental feng shui. Like I'm stubborn with my studio, and it actually keeps on getting messier and messier because I have, I guess, my work and my patterns on top of my desk. And you're not
Right.
supposed to put your work apparently on top of your desk. But I want it there because it fits. Okay, it fits in. Try to make everything fit.
But
But what are
here's my
some,
question for you.
yeah.
Sorry to cut you, but
No.
my question for you and what you just said is, you said it's supposed to be this place. Who said it's supposed to be this place?
Well, I was listening to like Chinese feng shui, like and they say don't put like your
Mm-hmm.
so you have your desk and then they say don't put your
Right?
work like right above it. But then for me, it's just about storage and fitting, and I could pull things out of the drawer in front of you know what I mean? But it's still not
Right.
working for real. Like,
So follow-up question. Follow-up question. Who knows you better, the feng shui people or you?
oh, I hear you.
Uh-huh.
So how am I
And that's the thing,
supposed
right?
yes.
That's the thing. Even people who may listen to me speak or follow some of my strategies, it may or may not work for you, and that's okay. There are so many experts out there throwing information at you, but it's up to you to filter through it and decide which ones align with you and with your needs. So not every feng shui person is going to be the one that you need to follow. Or you may take two things that they say and say, nope, this one doesn't work for me. I like it like this. This system works for me better. You know yourself better than the feng shui people.
You're right. I like that because I've even created an omen about it because I'm at work myself. Should I move? Should I not move that? But it needs there, it fits there. And
And,
really, I know myself. I get you.
mhm. But there's
Okay.
that self-doubt, right? And then you see
Yeah.
that a lot in individuals with ADHD, that self-doubt. Well, I read this somewhere or I heard this somewhere, so I must not be doing it right. Or I really feel this way, but this is what the other person said I should be feeling, so I guess I'll tell myself or convince myself that I feel like that. But you know yourself best. So trust yourself. ADHD, individuals with ADHD, I really want to implore that they trust themselves and try to reduce that self-doubt. Because imposter syndrome happens with everyone, right? But when you don't have that internal motivation working for you as strongly as someone without an ADHD brain, it's easier for you to fall prone to self-doubt and self-defeat and questioning yourself.
Wow. And
So
this is
you
the
know
thing, I
yourself
never
better.
imagined that ADHD, again, you said earlier when we started the show, was that so many people identify ADHD with children, identify ADHD with hyperactivity, and but
Yeah.
even if that's there, it all leads to a lot of these things such as insecurity. Actually, when I was typing up the your questions, stuff like that, my words jumped into your bio, and I was like, I read, I can't remember. Oh gosh, what was the word that I saw? Self-confidence. And I thought I wrote that, and I was like, oh, she deals with this too. I mean, it does
Yeah.
that for you too. That if you could even identify whether it's your executive functions need regulating, is the word?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm learning. I've been
Develop,
watching
develop.
podcasts.
Yep.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's on your
Okay.
emotions.
Think about any person who feels like they're not succeeding in some area, they doubt themselves, they question themselves, and they feel a lack of motivation. Now think about someone whose brain works differently or requires different things to different stimuli to succeed. And then you have people just dropping labels on them saying you're lazy because you didn't move from the couch today, or you're hyperactive and you can't focus because you're not doing your chemistry or your math or whatnot. When you have people who are just showing you your flaws and your imperfections, wouldn't you need help with building your self-confidence?
Absolutely, it's true.
And then you have individuals who don't see persons with ADHD as the successful, beautiful, strong individuals that they are. And even the areas with which they need development, those are also their strengths. So for example, the child in the preschool room who is running about because they don't want to sit down in the language and literacy area. If you run a music circle, they're going to sit down there and they're going to know every word. So their language is fine, their literacy is fine,
Mhm.
but they don't have the motivation to get that task done. And if it doesn't appeal to them, then they're not going to be motivated to get to it. But if you realize that this child, music or movement or art really appeals to this individual, then when you incorporate that into the way that you're teaching that child, chances are he's going to be able to focus on it. He may not focus on it for 1 hour like you would like him to, but he may be able to focus on it for 15 minutes. How is that a failure? Then why don't you have a 50-minute activity, schedule a bathroom break, have another 15-minute activity, have that individual help you walk around the class giving out papers to another your helper, and you break it up into little steps.
Yeah.
But if you don't look at the ways that you can help that individual instead of saying this is the way that individual is faltering, then of course they're going to need development with their self-confidence when they get older because they've been told that they are not enough, that they're disruptive, that they're distractive, that they're impulsive, that they're bad, that they're hyperactive.
Even
But
adults.
what if they just need help?
Yeah, even adults. I mean, especially coming from the African community, I mean,
Hmm.
we're often told that we're not enough. Our job is not enough if they're, to date.
Yep.
These are a reality. So, and or even I find like my daughter, she works in the corporate world and she's often given, this is something that goes on where I find is oppressive, where they give them beyond the amount of tasks.
Ooh,
It's all good.
sorry.
Beyond
Good
the
catch,
amount
though.
of, they also give them beyond the amount of task that, like they give them three man's job. I won't mention the company
Hmm.
I was working at, but when I left that position, I did have an assistant and then like for keying and stuff like that. But when I left it, they replaced me with five people, right? So there I was, and I knew it was not gratifying dealing with Western Canada, all the key accounts, like I won't say it in the big names, the big box store names,
Yep.
Western Canada to all of Western Canada, sorry. So to Winnipeg, right? And I was dealing with all of that, and they gave that all to me. And I see
Hmm.
as nurses, I've seen where my mom has had so much tasks to do. How many patients
Yep.
to one nurse a night? It's insane. How did she manage
Hmm.
that? She had a very good system because when she did gun, they couldn't keep up and the people weren't happy, right?
Yeah. Huh.
So these task managing strategies that have gone into this whole digital world, and so I mean, we really appreciate you today, even just some of the strategies that we can do and the things that we could pay attention. I even want to actually open the floor to any questions on the platform. I'm so bad at getting in this thing here. Getting in the live, there's the feed going down, and then, oh, I see something here from Steve Audie. Is there any other treatment that have been researched in treating ADHD and ADD without pharmaceutical? Children's brain in development should not be on these artificial meds.
So I think from what I gather from that question, it sounds like they're asking, is there a more natural
Approach.
solution? I don't have an answer for that. The reason I don't have an answer for that, one is because most of the things that you're getting out there is, um, they want to push pills basically. Um, and that's what you would find with anything or any doctor that you go to. You usually get like some type of pharmaceutical. But also because I wouldn't be the one to provide medications. So what I would do is coach you through it, give you those strategies, and then redirect. If we get to a point where you need medication, I would redirect you to a family physician who would be able to provide that medication for you. So I don't want to speak out of turn on something that I can't really provide that much information for.
Would you be the one though that I would say apart from, let's maybe look at it as apart from the pharmaceutical ways, is there maybe, I think the person may be looking for strategies as why we are even here today, maybe more strategic approach. I know that, I mean, like if I'm moving from fashion into fashion into farming, nutrition, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
nutrition from seed to table is what I'm moving in, the career change I'm making. And I know that like with nutrition, there's certain Caribbean stuff like stenatogen to calm the nerves and stuff like that. There
Right.
probably are, I would say to that Steve Audie that's asking that question, that there are probably similar alternatives that, like, I know, like, if people needed blood thinning for their blood, they would, you could resort to
Hmm.
garlic or Karila. You know what I'm saying? Certain things
Yeah.
to promote that. So maybe they can find ways to natural medicine, the things that they need to stimulate, so to put it. But I
Hmm.
think where you come in play, Jamelia, is that you are more of the strategist. You are the coach that is going to kind of help them navigate this world of ADHD and executive function.
Right. Yeah, so exactly that. I would basically be the one to help you navigate, even if you don't know for sure if you have ADHD, because I don't require that you have an ADHD diagnosis to be able to get those strategies, which is why I have defined my title as ADHD and executive function coach, because you may have those executive function issues, which you would find in individuals with ADHD, but is not owned by individuals with ADHD. So yes, I would be the one to help navigate you through that. Basically, I would be your driving instructor. So I would be sitting not at the wheel because I'm not here to drive the wheel, to hold the steering wheel and to direct your life for you. I'm the driving instructor sitting in the passenger seat with my seatbelt on, telling you put your seatbelt on, buckle up, and I teach you the steps to drive your own car so that you can get from
Yes,
point A to point B
coach.
successfully.
Yeah, you don't kick
Because
the
when you
ball for
have a
you.
session,
You teach us how to
not
kick
at
the
all.
ball.
Not at all. And I had a conversation with my partner recently because I saw, another professional, because you can see so many different professionals in social media. But I saw another professional basically saying that, once you sign up with me, I am going to be the driver. And I'm like, well, why do you want to drive? Because when they leave your session, who's going to drive for them?
Ooh.
When you go and you get your driver's license, when you're going for your G license, who takes the test for you? So if you have the driving instructor behind the wheel driving for you, and then you're in the passenger seat just taking notes but not implementing anything, it's time for you to do your driving test, you're going to fail. That's setting you up for failure. So I am here to be in the passenger seat. Our sessions are your sessions.
Yes.
What are you hoping to get out of it? Tell me your goals. Tell me what you have been struggling with. And then once you're finished letting me know all of this information, I ask you, are you comfortable with me letting you know my observations? In the time that we've talking, this is what I've heard. This is what I've observed. Because sometimes the third party or the person outside of your situation can see things that you haven't been able to identify about yourself or your situation. And then that's where I step in and we cross reference and decide on the goals that we're going to work on moving forward. But it's your session. And you have to be able to have not just write the notes down, but implement it after. I'm giving you homework during our sessions because you have to work on it.
Wonderful.
Because when you're done with me, are you going to be able to continue implementing those success strategies so that either you don't have to come back for a session or you're coming back for something else, or you're sending me an email saying, hey, Jamelia, I'm doing great.
That's
So
awesome.
I'm not driving for you.
Yeah, you're not driving. You're teaching us how to drive the car, our own cars.
Exactly.
There's another question here. I think I could sort of get what they're saying. When was ADHD identified in humans? This was never an issue for the generation Xers, and maybe it's more prevalent now, I think is what they're trying to say, because I'm sure
Yeah.
some of us have a high propensity for attention. Because I've seen where you talk
Mm-hmm.
about people, or some people, when they hear the door open, them look. When they're easily distracted, they hear something drop, them hear like a sound, them hear music, them a bonks. You know what I mean? Adult or child,
Exactly.
right? But then I think, is it more prevalent again? Get maybe even touching into the fact that we are in the digital age, information age. Um, what would you,
Yeah.
if you could speak to that?
So yeah, of course. And I really love the fact that you said more prevalence because just because we haven't heard about it before doesn't mean it wasn't in existence. And again, like you said, with the digital age, everything is online, everything is at our fingertips, so we can get that information quickly, which means we have more knowledge or awareness that it's out there. That's
Mhm.
not always a good thing because a lot of the information out there is false information. So that's why you always have to, fact check your sources and make sure that it's coming from a reputable organization.
It's true.
Um, I would say we started hearing about it more around like the early 1900s, but not as much as we would now. But if you look back to when it was discovered, those are some of the dates you would see, like 1902, for example. Um, I can't say when was the very first case of an individual with ADHD.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's more prevalent now. Um, an unpopular belief, and this is my unpopular belief that I'm sharing, is a lot of there may be some individuals misdiagnosed because it may be more profitable to get medication for something you may not need medication for. Because, like I said, a lot of the higher ups need to get that income when it comes to pharmaceuticals and things like that. So, would I tell anyone to go straight to medication? No, I would not. However, each situation is subjective. So if it is an extreme case, or if you do need something to help regulate what's going on in your brain, for example, then I won't say shy away from it. But it was around, ADHD has been around for time. But like other diagnoses or other things in society, there's a taboo around it. There's a stigma around admitting that you may need a diagnosis in something. There's a stigma around having any type of neurodiversity, having a developmental need. So it may not have been talked about as much before. And even when you look at children back in the day, they usually would just hear, yeah, they're bad, or they just don't listen, or they just can't focus, and
Unruly.
then that's it.
Them unruly.
Right? Unruly, exactly, right? The unruly.
Yes.
But how many times have we dug deeper? There are so many individuals out there now and in the past who have ADHD or present, they match an ADHD profile, but they go unnoticed or undiagnosed because we label them with something else, or we just say, yeah, they just don't listen, or yeah, he just can't sit still. He just like that all the time.
I think it's
But it's been
important.
around.
I really think it's an important that I'm appreciate the fact that you're have this niche of dealing with coaching adults as well who are dealing with the ADHD, because on a whole, a lot of adults do pass it on to their children.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just different settings. I was in I was an entrepreneurial incubator from a very young age, from a teenage age. And when I'm ADHD was when I was operating the business,
Yeah.
and whether they were seeing it. I mean, whether or not I didn't think they were seeing it, maybe I was organized in the office, but in business, I was chasing that dollar, and I find
Mm-hmm.
that I had so many notes to tell you. I had anxiety coming on today. It's like I had notes, I had a Santa Claus list of stuff, and I had to cut it down. But I know it's like when we get into chasing the dollar and stuff like that, we are also creating these bad cycles that would
Yeah.
even trigger and promote ADHD, like this and the bad feng shui. Like I'm like the cycles
Mm-hmm.
are dangerous, because it seems that this is like
Yep.
not going to get you out of poverty. You're going to be in the wilderness for another 40 years. Like I'm
Yeah.
dreading that. I don't want to
And
be in
there's
the
that
wilderness.
there's that there's that generational trauma as well, right? We live what we learn. We live what we learn. And I've seen individuals, children who have ADHD who present with ADHD markers. And you may have parents or guardians who are insisting, nope, they don't have that, because again, and I don't give them, like, this is to cast no blame, but not everyone is ready to admit to or accept that a diagnosis may be needed. But then when I look at these parents, I say I can identify ADHD markers in them as well. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you weren't raised, or you haven't learned or gotten that support to identify it in yourself, then, like, you may pass it on genetically. But losing my train of thought there. But yes, so basically, yes, adults with ADHD, whether they know they have it or not, there's a very
They
good
definitely.
chance that they may have a child with ADHD as well. But there's so many adults who need that help. You may look at couples who are struggling in their relationship, who may be on the brink of divorce, for example, because one or even both of them may have ADHD and either don't know it, or one knows it, but the other person, the non-ADHD individual, may not know how to accept it, identify it, or what to do with it. So, You may have one person who's paying the bills all the time, who follows up with it, and the other person who is not paying the light bill, who, your electricity is getting cut or your hydro is gone because someone's not following up with it. Like there are so many different things that could happen in a relationship with adults, for example, because I know we spoke a bit more about about children tonight.
It's funny you see just touched you see this person's feeling you, the feeling they're with us. Art Avenue, you're always with us. Respect. They said you mentioned that you can assist with executives that might have ADHD to better manage their business, but do you have tips for ADHD individuals for dealing with interpersonal relationships? And you just touched on that.
There you go.
Howard, like yeah, like that's like a serious, like it's real. It's
Yeah.
I have a failed relationship just because of that. Whether you want to call it conditional love, it's just ADHD is real.
It is, and it's interesting that you said conditional love, and in some cases it may be. Obviously I don't know your situation, so I can't speak on that, but it could be that for some cases. For other cases is your spouse just doesn't know. They don't know, maybe both of you don't know that you require diagnosis. Maybe both of you don't know how to identify those things, or maybe your spouse just doesn't understand what it looks like. So one thing I would say first is get the information. Get the information, even if you don't think you have ADHD, but you know that there's this one area that you need support in, or you need that, those strategies for. Get the information. Talk to someone like myself, or if there's someone else that in your community that's offering it, do that as well. And then share that information with your spouse. I am not a therapist, so obviously I cannot tell you, how to be in your relationship. Everyone is different, but I would like to advise having that communication, building that foundation of communication so that you can share that information with your partner. But partners, you also have to be willing to learn about it, to be patient and supportive through it, because it's hard. And if it's hard for you to deal with, imagine how it must feel for the person who has ADHD or who matches an ADHD profile. There's some. I remember this past client that I spoke about who had trouble just with mail, opening mail. And it sounds very mundane, it sounds very simple, it sounds very casual, and it sounds like an everyday thing. But when you procrastinate to that level, or you're not motivated, or you have an emotional conflict with the task, for example, you don't want to open the mail because you might be getting that divorce letter, for example, or you have bills to pay, but you don't have enough money in your bank to pay that bill right now, so you're not going to open the mail because you're afraid to see it, you're afraid to address it. Chances are your mail is piling up for months and months, and then you're losing the power in your house. You may be late on your mortgage. Like so many things can result from this seemingly simple everyday task, but it's not just an everyday task for a person with ADHD. And these are some things that are overlooked. It's like, well, you're an adult, just deal with it. This is what you have to do as an adult. You're this, just deal with it. You're that, just deal with it. But not everyone is equipped to just deal with it. Some people need the support strategies. So, you make your list. If it's something that you're having a hard time getting to, then find the one place in your house that is unavoidable. Whether it's as soon as you walk in the front door, it is right there across from you in your face, so that you have no choice but to get to it, then do that.
Yeah, set up that those layouts, those functions, that
Exactly.
work with you a lot.
If you know Yes, exactly. If you know that one thing that you're struggling with in your relationship is emotional regulation, you're having trouble managing your emotions, then first of all, let's assess what is your trigger for those emotions, what makes you explode, or whatever your emotional
You have to come
outburst
back
is.
on the show and
First,
talk about that because the emotions,
yes.
you haven't touched it. I've seen some of your podcasts where when you get into the depths of the emotions and the triggers and so forth, it's really another level of work that one has to
It,
do.
It really is. It is. And don't get me wrong, there's no quick fix, and it is all work, but the work that you put in now helps to mitigate the work that you have to put in later. And if you're able to start implementing these strategies now, then when you move forward, you can move forward more successfully, and you'd be able to manage these things when they come up. because chances are they'll come up again. Like, we are human beings, we are emotional creatures by nature. However, what you do when those emotions arise is what's going to define you and also affect your relationships, whether it's with your spouse, whether it's your relationship with your family, in the workplace, or your relationship with yourself. And emotional regulation is definitely a big factor that I think everyone should be addressing.
There's another question that came in from one of our viewers as well. 22R
Mhm.
Views also asked, what if you use sticky notes, but you still find yourself procrastinating?
Well, first thing I would say is it seems the sticky notes are not working, which is okay. However, if the sticky notes were your go-to, it probably means that you need that visual stimulation. So you're more of a visual learner and you need something in your face. So first I would ask you, are you more of a technological person or do you like things in writing more often? If you're a technological person, then you may want to try virtual sticky notes. So you might want to start putting reminders, even if it's every 15 minutes, putting reminders on your phone. You may want to maybe like in your bathroom mirror, for example, if the sticky notes are not working there, then you may want to be writing stuff on your bathroom mirror or putting it there. But ask if 22 Art Avenue, if you don't mind sharing a little more, can you tell me what about the sticky notes is not helping you? And let me know one thing that you like, if you like music, or just tell me what you like if you don't mind sharing. But I would say with the stick, like in general, the sticky notes question, I would tell you to find what works best for you. And I like the fact that you're trying something because it means that you want to find something that's going to help you. So sometimes it's just brainstorming a bit more to find that thing that helps you better.
I think like, I mean, for me, like I guess it's a level of discipline too, like, um, accountability to self, that
Hmm.
you have to maybe affirmations that can keep you accountable. Maybe your sticky notes are affirmations or something. Like, I mean, I've
Yeah.
seen where like with my planner, where I did a thing where if I move my task, I found pleasure in crossing off the task versus
Hmm. I'm that way too.
moving them over. And then when I seen like, okay, you're in the middle of the week and you've moved, that Wednesday is now looking really loaded, or Friday's going to be mayhem if you don't get some of these other tasks done, or, you know what I mean, with sticky notes. But
Yeah.
sticky notes, don't really work for me, but then they're visible, right?
Yeah. So I'm very similar to you in that, but for me, I'm more like I'm quick with my fingers with regards to typing. So I like to make a checklist on my phone, and then what I do is like you said, I cross it off, but I don't cross it off and delete it. Once I've accomplished a task, I leave it for a few days crossed off because I know there's going to be one day where I don't get to what I need to get to, where I'm not motivated and I just need to take a beat. And then for me, self-defeat is definitely an easy go-to. So what I've decided to do is when I cross it off, I leave it there. So that when I get to that almost point of self-defeat, I can look at my checklist and say, see, look at how many things you did achieve this week. Look at how many tasks you did accomplish this week. Because it's so easy for us to dwell on the failures. And it's so hard for us to remind ourselves of all the accomplishments and everything that we have been successful in. So I cross it off, but I leave it there for a few days so that I could retrain my brain into accepting that I can actually do things right. I'm not flawed all the time. And it's about retraining your brain, right? To unlearn the self-doubt and unlearn the self-defeat. There's so much unlearning that you have to do before you can learn new things. You can't pour into an empty cup, and it doesn't just mean when you're trying to give to other people. It means for yourself too. If you're filled with self-doubt and self-defeat and a lack of self-confidence and fear of failure, and you're filled with all this negativity, where's the room for the positivity, for the affirmations, for the mantra, and for the success
You gotta
stories?
make
You
the
got to
room.
get rid of it.
Yeah, you have to make the room for that and release all of the self-doubt, the negativity, the bad self-talk,
Hmm.
But again, it's just realizing that it can actually be connected to all these things that stem out of having ADHD, whether you're an adult or not.
Exactly.
I wanted to actually just food for thought for you with regards to, I wonder why, in terms of like the African community, The fear of diagnosing your child, not only taboo, but I think, I mean, coming from a person who's raised three children in the French immersion program, every single diagnostic, right until they finish high school, except for college, they're
Yeah.
like, yes, oh my God. Right, they finished, but the each one, the fear of diagnostic was putting them in the hands of the education
Mm-hmm.
system pipeline. So I think for me, like when I looked at it, I was like, yes, okay. Then they said to me that one of my children had no stimuli, like there was nothing that she could be stimulated. So she's not a living being, like a dog can be stimulated. You know what I mean? You guys take all these training programs and whatnot, but they were just trying to push them on the
Yeah.
French program, right? This is what, so it was an ongoing, battle as most African um, um, people experience in the school system, in the public school system,
Yeah.
any school system really, they are going to be challenged more than other groups. So do we want to identify our children in the system so that they can just say 2+1 = 4 and get a check mark?
Exactly. Exactly.
So I think that's what.
So I think it's a very beautiful point that you just raised, and I really love that you just spoke about that, and I thank you for sharing that. Okay, let's just look at an everyday example. If you're going to the doctor, one of the first things they ask you is, have you had any problems in the past? What symptoms have you seen before? Is there anything major that you have had to seek treatment for? If the answer is yeah, like if I have a stomach ache and I tell the doctor that I have gallstones, for example, as soon as they press my stomach, they're probably going to say, yeah, it's probably just your gallstones. Especially when you're a person of color, chances are they're not going to dig deeper, you know? And then there's this example, if you just buy a yellow car, a yellow, I don't know, Lamborghini, for example, you're going to start seeing yellow Lamborghinis all around you because it's what is in your mind, it's what's in your face, and it's the information that you have. It goes the same way. If you put a label on your child, chances are everyone else is only going to see them as that label. And please don't misunderstand, this is not me trying to dissuade you from seeking a diagnosis of any sort, because with a diagnosis, you have a better access to resources.
Yeah.
And if you need it, you need it. However, if you look at it from a systemic level, when you look at the way Blacks are treated in the community, there's so much injustice. Like we could have a whole conversation about the injustice that has been happening for decades and decades before, and that's still happening now. You look at individuals who who have a diagnosis, who have some type of mental health need, and individuals are not trained to recognize it and to assess it properly. So the minute they see someone who is not responding in a way that they would expect, instead of thinking they may have a mental health issue or they may have a diagnosis, they're just thinking this is another Black person who is bad for society. So let me do or treat them in a way that they should not be treated. So there's so much injustice that can be linked to a diagnosis. So I can understand the fear that some parents and guardians may have, because they don't want their child to receive injustice. They don't want their child to be, to fall victim to inequities in the school system, the education system, in the workplace, or even when they're walking down the street. So I can understand that concern. As much as, I'm an educator, I've worked in the daycare, I've worked as a supervisor, I've worked in the classroom. But when you work at that level, you see things. And there are individuals who, yeah, he has ADHD, so that's just how he is. He's bad. Or, yeah, I think that person has autism, or I heard they have autism, so they're not going to be able to learn this, so don't even bother. Once there's a label, then you have an excuse to not treat that individual in an equitable way, or you have an excuse to not put your all into helping this individual thrive, or you have an excuse to judge.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that needs to be cut as quickly as possible, but it's not happening as soon as it should be. So I understand that fear. However, if we continue to live in fear, then we are going to be victims for the rest of our lives. So I would still say, if you need to get a diagnosis, because people are going to judge anyway.
Oh, yeah.
What we need to do is then first of all, set the example, model the confidence that we would like to see in our children, because when they get to a point where they're out in the world on their own with or without a diagnosis, the judgment is going to come, especially if your skin is this shade or a little lighter or a little darker. If you are an individual of color, the injustice will come whether you like it or not, whether you have a diagnosis or not. So yes, there is a fear, and there's a fear for a good reason, but we have to conquer that fear with faith, with safety, but we have to be able to do what we need to do to continue thriving. And that also means securing our children's mental health, securing their holistic development, and keeping them safe in the ways that we can, and helping to keep them safe in the ways that we may not be able to if we're not with them every step of the way when they're out there.
Wow, this has been amazing, Jamelia. A wealth of knowledge for you that are listening. So thank you again for those that are still on the Instagram and Twitter. Shayna McCullough, is there any questions from Twitter before we wrap this up quickly? Because I don't want to forget anybody. CEO.
Let me see. Let me check Twitter really quick, guys.
Okay. We actually tried a little something today where we're
Sorry, you tried to what?
yeah, sorry, I just thought you say something. Where we're getting, we're just, again, we're using technology. So I'm not in the studio today. I'm away at the studio, and we're being good to the emissions and, all that good things.
I love it. I love it. And,
There's one
Sharon,
person asking how
before,
they can
oh,
find her, where they can find her. Does she have a website?
Okay.
Okay, great question. Website is pending. Once I get the website, I'm going to put it out there for you guys. But as of now, you can find me on Instagram. My Instagram business page is at diamond_initiative. You can also find me. I have a Facebook a Facebook business page, which is Diamond Initiative, or at I am Jamelia Gay. And you can also find me on LinkedIn, Jamelia Gay. My email address is diamond_initiative@yahoo.com. So no matter where you look for me, Diamond_initiative, you're going to find me. So any other questions following tonight's conversation, please feel free to send me a message. On my Instagram page, you will also see a link in my bio if you want to book a discovery call to see if ADHD and executive function coaching works for you. You do not need to have a diagnosis to need help. And I am here to help you and just to have that conversation. So Diamond_initiative.
Beautiful, beautiful. Jamelia, I'm just going to pull up one last thing before we go. I opened up the wrong thing.
No problem.
Bear with me a moment. Oh, it's right here. Okay. To make sure. I have my little question, but it's only kind of leading into certain
Sorry,
things.
there's one more question, Sharon, from Twitter.
There's another question? Twitter, go on with it.
Twitter. This person asks, do you specialize in adults, or do you also have work with children?
Both. So I work with children with ADHD or who may match an ADHD profile. I work with adults, same criteria. I also work with parents who may have children and they want to know how to efficiently support their children. And I work with schools and organizations who may want to know what to look for or how to help their staff and their employees who may have executive function needs as well. So whether it's needing help with time management, meeting deadlines, multitasking. Someone asked before, I think it was 22 Art Avenue, but with those interpersonal relationships as well. So I work with both adults and children individually, couples who may need that support, and then, anyone in the education or business setting as well.
So I have this question that's going to go take us a little bit away, but it might be, you do have to come back. Will you come back? Will you come back to
absolutely.
Okay, we
absolutely.
need you back. April or May? It doesn't matter. April or May.
No, absolutely. And, just before the Twitter question, I was about to say, I actually really enjoyed this conversation. I love the interaction from the chat. It's amazing. And I'll thank you again before I leave, but I wanted to say thank you now. This was amazing. But I love your question.
Likewise. I have this deep question. So that's the thing. I don't know if you got a chance to see it because I did have anxiety sending you out the question them and thing. So But the question is
That's okay.
when you had touched on, where is it? Oh my gosh, why is my eyes jumping? When you touched on the prefrontal cortex,
Right.
does that relate to our spiritual wellness as well?
Hmm.
It
That's a really good question.
And we have more people that
Um,
might be able to
I
answer that, but because do you touch a little bit on spirituality? Do you work with anybody on that level
so
or specialists?
what I would say, and I'll give a very limited response, because this may more be for someone who, maybe studying neurobiology, into spirituality, because there are individuals who do study that. What
Neurobiology?
I can say,
That was
neurobiology, with spirituality.
okay.
So that connection, with the neural part of so basically your brain, how your brain works, and then with that connection with spirituality. So there are people who do specialize in that. I do not specialize in that, but what I can say is when it comes to the prefrontal cortex, that's where you have your focus, that's where you have your motivation. And that motivation and intuition is definitely something that is linked to spirituality. So I can definitely see the connection with that and with the openness for that. But with regards to a more scientific response, I can't provide that. And I don't like to try to provide responses that
No, that's
I don't
fine.
have knowledge on.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I can say that I'm sure there would be a connection, and there have been studies on the connection. Some of the studies that I've looked into are contradictory. So there are some individuals who say, because of the motivation that resides in the prefrontal cortex, that's linked to, an increase in spirituality. But you can also look at it, on the other end when you flip the coin, because individuals with ADHD may have that decrease or insufficiency in dopamine and norepinephrine, which are the neurotransmitters that help get that motivation, out there.
Mhm.
If that there's an insufficiency in that, then there may be a lack of spirituality, or a lack in maintaining spirituality because of the decrease in your internal motivation. So different studies show different things, which is why I don't want to say too much on it
And
because I don't want to give incorrect
and
information to
adults
any of the viewers or listeners.
and adults try different things as well,
Hmm.
just to get
Exactly.
that vessel, whether it be ganja, whether it be mushroom, whether it be alcohol, whether it be, because they
Hmm.
call it spirits for a reason, but then at the same time it's
Yes.
interconnection with the prefrontal cortex. We're going to be touching a little
Hmm.
bit about on that next week, but we're going to be talking about
Yep.
queens of last of yesteryear and queens like yourself today. It's been
Mhm.
amazing to have you on
Thank
the
you.
platform. There's so much to learn. You guys, again, you got to check her out at Diamond Initiative, Jamelia Gay. Yeah, I'm so happy to have you here. We're definitely going to have you again.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Loved being here. Thank you to everyone. All of your questions were amazing. And feel free to contact me after diamond_initiative or diamond_initiative at yahoo.com.
It's your girl, Lady Sharon. I should say it's your host, Lady Sharon, signing out with Jamelia Gay on the Roots Reggae Hub. One love.
Have a blessed evening.